Hi boys and girls, this is the video to review lesson 7.3. So we're going to start by looking at the screen. Today I asked if you could complete the Google form because it's easier to do it here than in Connected. So number 1 shows a picture of two fraction circles, and by now we should be able to recognize that the shaded area represents the numerator and the number of slices represents the denominator. So this fraction here is 1/8 and this fraction here is 1/8. So you had to write an addition problem for this model. So that would be 1/8 plus 1/8. And that equals 2/8 because when we add fractions, we only add the numerators, the denominators stay the same. Okay, now looking at the same picture, you had to write a multiplication equation. But some of the students I noticed wrote 1/8 times 1/8. The problem with this is that when we multiply fractions, you actually multiply the numerator and you multiply the denominators. So 8 times 8 would be 64. So this is actually not correct. When we add fractions, we only add the numerators and the denominators stay the same. But with multiplication, you have to multiply the numerators and the denominators. So the correct equation for number 2 is actually 2 times 1/8. And if we did multiply 2 times 1/8, we would put a 1 underneath the 2, and we multiply across the numerators, and we multiply the denominators. And see, we get 2/8. Okay, what is the second multiple of 1/8? Number 3, the answer is 2/8. Number 4, there is a picture of a number line, and it shows that we're counting by 1/5. Right? So it would be 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5. So we just had to show an addition equation for that. So you just write 1/5, add that 6 times, and that would be, equals 6/5. And for number 5, we had to write a multiplication equation. So it's simply 6 times 1/5. And for number 6, what is the 6th multiple of 1/5? That would be 6/5. Because if we count by 1/5 6 times, we get 6/5. Number 7, we had to just solve 3 times 1/6. And so when you have a whole number, you just put a number 1 underneath the whole number and multiply across. For number 8, you do the same thing. You multiply across, that gives you 4/10. Number 9, write an addition equation using a unit fraction. So you can make up any unit fraction. And remember, a unit fraction is a fraction with a 1 in the numerator. So you could have written anything simple. It could have been 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 2/2. It could have been like 1/5 plus 1/5 equals 2/5. And for number 10, you had to write a multiplication equation using a unit fraction. So it could have been 2 times 1/5 to keep it the same as the last problem. Okay, number 11, you had to, there's a missing number here, a missing fraction here. So you had to figure out what is the missing number that completes the equation. So you have 1/12 times a number equals 4/12. Now, some students wrote 4/12. And I could see why, because when we add fractions, we're used to, looking at just the numerators and thinking the denominators stay the same. But however, with multiplication of fractions, we multiply the numerator. So 1 times 4 would give you 4, but 12 times 12 would be 144, which would make that equation incorrect. So the correct number was actually just a 4. 1/12 times 4 equals 4/12. Similar to number 12, 8 times a number equals 8/10. Okay, so the missing number for this equation is 1/10. You see that? 8 times 1 is 8, and 1 times 10 is 10. So what two numbers could you multiply to get 7/5? Some students wrote, for example, 5/5 and 2/5. But this is multiplication. So if we look at the denominator, we see that there's a 5. So the unit fraction is 1/5. So what number times 1/5 will give us 7/5? Well, what number could we multiply to get 7 at the numerator? It would just be 7. And the 5 has to stay the same, so we have to put a 1 here. So the answer is 7 times 1/5 equals 7/5. For number 14, the denominator is an 8, which means the unit fraction is going to be 1/8, right? 1/8. So what number could we multiply that will give us a numerator of 9 in our answer? It has to be a 9, because 9 times 1 is 9. And the denominator here will have to be a 1. So the answer is 9 times 1/8 equals 9/8, right? So 9 times 1/8. Number 15, what is a unit fraction for 7/8? So if you have a fraction 7/8, really we're looking at the denominator, which is an 8. So the unit fraction would be 1/8. For number 16, what is the unit fraction for 4/5? Our denominator is a 5. So our unit fraction is 1/5, right? And just to go a little bit further with this explanation, so if we did the 1/5, like repeated addition 4 times, 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 equals 4/5. Okay. All right, boys and girls, I'm gonna stop at number 16 just because I want to keep the video short to be able to upload it a little bit easier. But I hope this helped you understand the lesson a little bit further. And we're gonna continue to practice with this tomorrow and on Friday. Have a good night.